Welcome to the She Connects podcast. My name is Susan Vanden Heuvel, and I am honored to be your host each and every week. This is an extension of my ministry, She Rises, that allows me to connect with women in the online space. You can learn more about me and my ministry at www.sherisesmn.org or simply tap the link in the show notes. But for now, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm so excited that you're here, and I have to tell you just straight out of the gate, I am really excited about this week's conversation with my friend Kristin on avoiding hustle culture. I tell you what, I feel like I've done a couple of episodes on this topic. It's been a while ago. I don't know if you want to take time and scroll through all of the different episodes on the She Connects podcast, but I know they're in there somewhere. And I remember very clearly saying, I am the anti-hustle gal. I feel like that is just not the way that God wants us to live our lives and to serve him. I don't believe that we are called to take life's corners on two wheels. and I just don't see that as God's heart for us. So we're going to get at it. We're going to dive right in there. And you know me, if you've been around this corner of the internet for any length of time, you know that I don't shy away from these types of topics, and I always spend time at the deep end of the pool. So we're going to get right at it. But first, I want to welcome to the show Kristin Kurtz. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Tell us a little bit about you and where you're joining us from.
Yeah, thank you. I am with you on the I don't do shallow. I don't do shallow. So yeah, I guess you could call me like a deep diver as well. In essence, I am a wife and a mama to two miracle boys who are teenagers. I've got one who's going to be graduating this year, which is just wild how fast time goes. I like to ask the question of people like, a lot of times people will say like, well, what do you do? And I like to sometimes say like, what what do you be or who do you be? And in the spirit, the Lord calls me a woman of wonder. Been on quite a wild adventure through my whole life, and just picking up keys along the way to not only release breakthrough over myself through his power and provision, all the things, but to then receive and then release to others. The doing part has been quite also an adventure. I would say, just even when I was younger, I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing testimonies. I tend to be a listener, which is maybe a little bit unusual. So I believe that I've kind of been a coach my whole life. But it wasn't until I was 40, which is fun because I always say, like, I went into the wilderness and I came out of wilderness into the wild. So I officially became a Christian life coach, and it's been about 7 years, New Wings coaching. And it's definitely taken on new wings from being kind of like the butterfly, the transformation, to like the stronger element of wings in the eagle with that strength and fortitude to come up higher because butterflies can't do as much as the eagles can. So I love your podcast name because it so resonates with my spirit. And yeah, that's a little bit of the be and the do.
I love that. And listeners, make sure that you listen all the way to the end, because I'm going to invite Kristin to share a little bit more about how you can connect with her, not only in the online space, but connect with her for breakthrough that you would like in different areas of your own life. So, and make sure that you check out the show notes for all of the links. Those are available too, that will give you quick access to connect with Kristin. But let's dive into this conversation on hustle culture. How would you define that term, and why do you think it's unhealthy?
I was like full hustle girl. And in that being, it was really walking in the ways of the world. What do the gurus say? Got to make money quick, got to do it fast now, no rest when you die. And that being said, like it's literally something that's generational for me that had to be broken off. So I actually want to go to this post that came up in my memories and share a little bit of what I actually had shared starting like 5 years ago, if that's okay.
Sure.
Um, just kind of read it, the beginning part. The world screams at you to hustle, to get where you need to go, quote unquote. Have you stopped long enough to consider this statement word, hustle? The definition: force someone to move hurriedly or unceremoniously in a specified direction, push roughly, jostle, coerce, or pressure someone into doing or choosing something, sell aggressively, obtain by illicit action, swindle, cheat. At that point, I said, let's flip the script. Let's work from a place of rest. Now, that to some people may not make sense, right? And to me, when I see even the two words put together, holy hustle and holy put with what I just read off as the definition, it doesn't really coincide very well. So I think honestly, the world and even some believers have tried to slap the two together and make it seem holy, but it's very not. Um, so that would be like what I have encountered even in myself. And like I said, I've had to be delivered of it. And it's a self focused, striving, numbers driven platform. I would say especially numbers driven. It's a very tangible, well, if I could just, have XYZ amount of followers on my Instagram, or then I'd be good to go. Or trying to like strive for like number one. I recently did a post, there's a verse that says, the first will be last, last will be first. So my question was like, why are so many striving for first? Right. But that's
Yeah.
the way of the world.
Right.
So it's this again, it's coming up higher. What is he showing us how to operate, whether in business, ministry, in the workplace, as a mama, homeschooling, anything. Like
Yeah.
this can all be taken in. The hustle can be brought in anywhere.
Yeah. I want to go back to something just real quick. I really appreciated that you talked a little bit about adding the word holy in front of hustle, and especially given what you read, which is just so applicable.
Yeah.
And to your point, adding holy to that, it just feels like it doesn't fit. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem to go together. And
Yeah.
yet, I think that, again, if we're going to go there, even for us as believers, there are things in our lives where we want something so bad. And so we try to make it fit somehow. We try to make it sound a little bit more palatable. And
Mhm.
so we add Jesus to it, or we add holy to it, or we add some other Christianese to it. And
Mhm.
then that's what's going to make it feel better and sound better. But I also appreciated your vulnerability in sharing how the Lord has had to help you
Yeah.
break your alignment with that in your own life. Because I too have had to need some help with that. And I think that anybody, if we're honest, because
Mhm.
we live in a fallen world, and it is, to your point, the world's ways of doing things. If you're going to have anything, if you're going to achieve anything, if you're going to earn, all of that.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be honest, every time I have tried to strive to get ahead or to have this, that, or the other thing, once I maybe attain that, it just is never enough.
Mhm.
And so then the goalpost is always moving. And all of that striving, all it does is produce emptiness. It produces discouragement and disappointment because we're putting everything in that whatever we're trying to achieve, when our sufficiency, our quote unquote enough, isn't in that. It's in
Right.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so good. In your study of the Bible, do you
Mm.
see, I know that we kind of already are touching on this, but holy hustle supported biblically? I know we're kind of sharing our
Oh,
viewpoints and our own experiences, but you've
yeah.
read the Bible. I mean,
Yeah.
do you see it in there?
I've never seen it supported anywhere, honestly, and I think because of what I've come out of and now I see from a different viewpoint, it's actually when I see hustle or especially when I hear holy hustle, it literally it's like nails on a chalkboard. So I haven't seen it, and honestly, like, Mary and Martha, right? Those That's a very good example of Mary was sitting at his feet. Martha, of course, we do work like the Proverbs 31 woman, and I think even she's been taken out of context to be like,
Mm.
well, she did all the things and she was working all the time. She stayed up late. Well, you have to dig a little deeper into her
Right.
to but then there's also the condemnation like, "Oh, I should be doing all the things," and, one of the things is that if somebody ever tells you, you could have, should have, would have, all the things, like, you should do this, you should do that, just take a step back and, like, again, if somebody's telling you what you should do, and I'm gonna say this very carefully because I don't want anybody to hear it wrong, but the counter to that is don't should on me.
Mm. Yeah. Yep. Amen.
HOULD. Again, I've come out of corporate, being in the workplace. A lot of times, unfortunately, it is. It's more of a hustle culture. But biblically, I have not seen it supported at all.
Mhm.
Part of this post that I did actually said, "Did you know?" I'll just read a little bit of this. Did you know that Jesus' public ministry lasted about 3 years? In his short time discipling, healing, and preaching, he took a lot of time to get away with the Father and rest. So if you can imagine, and I like to imagine things I'm a very visual visioneering person. But I think a lot of times if somebody were to be told you have only 3 years to do this thing, would that natural inclination be to like, oh, I'm gonna go rest for a while, I'm gonna go pray, I'm gonna get away from what I'm called to do? Would that be the natural inclination? I think about it all the time. Such a good example.
Yeah.
That to me is what the flip the script of hustle is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think looking at, well, first, I just have to say, I also do not see it supported biblically. It is just not,
Yeah.
it's not there. And, but I think looking at Jesus's earthly ministry, how many times do we see him not allowing himself to be baited into doing things that he knew God hadn't called him to do?
Yeah.
Perform a sign, show us a, perform this miracle, do this, do that. And he just was not willing to cave to the opinions, the expectations, and the demands of people if God's hand wasn't on it. And I think that that is really what we're talking about here is what I'm doing, is that what God has called me to do? All of
Yeah.
this chasing and all of this running and all the things that I'm doing, God, have I spent time with you, invited you into these decisions and the plans that I'm making? What is your heart? What are your thoughts? Is your hand
Right.
on this? And I think that it really leads into our next question. I think that our relationship with God is a partnership. I've described it that way for I don't know how many years. And I think that that is just I think about some of the people that maybe are listening and thinking, okay, but so am I just supposed to sit in my house and God placed a dream in my heart, and so he's just gonna show up at my front door? We're gonna get there here. So in this partnership, I always describe it as he has a role, we have a role.
Mhm.
Obviously, we can't do his and he won't do ours. And so, with that, what are some hallmark signs that we have, instead of partnering with God, we've partnered with hustling? Let's unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah. So there's a few things that come to mind, and I have to catch myself from saying this sometimes too. I have to figure this out. I have to figure this out. So when I hear that in conversations with people, in, clients, or just even out and about, I ask and like, what do you need to figure out? Like, what do you specifically need to figure out? Because that's taking, you know, Jesus take the wheel, that old song.
Yeah.
um, it's taking the hands back on the wheel, and you're feeling like it's on you to figure it out. You are no longer co-piloting, you're just trying to figure it out. And he has like the really cool strategies, and they might sound kind of crazy. So I think that's where that kind of tail spins into a little bit of tailspins. Does that make sense? Maybe. I don't know. Sounds good.
We'll go with it.
Tails into. So, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes sometimes the plans that he gives us and the steps he gives us, they take a little longer. Like planting seeds. Some seeds come up faster than other seeds, right?
Right.
I think a lot of times the hustle can be tied again into, not only do I have to figure this out, but a guru has figured this out and they are now my co-pilot. So a lot of times, and I'm not saying everybody, I have a lot of great mentors. I've had a lot of, I have a lot of great coaches, but I've also had the gurus and the, books, and there's so many things out there that we can start. Okay, well, I don't have the answer. God's answer is not right, and it's taking too long, and I better like go seek out a guru because they've made $10 million, whatever it is, something
Right.
that's veering you off course. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of distractions out there. So I feel like that's definitely, the potential to go off course. Like Jesus was going about my father's business, like, "Me keep going." We were, before we started, we were talking a little bit about boundaries, really knowing like, okay, Lord, like, what am I doing this season? What does it look like? But I would say, like, physically wise, fear, worry, like anxiety, just that unrest, sickness, disease, disease is spelled dis-ease.
Mm. That's good. Say that again.
All of the things are just dis-ease.
Disease. That's really good.
Yeah, dis-ease. It really can cause anxiety. A lot of these things can cause dis-ease, right? Like I said, I was a poster child years ago. It was 2017 that he got a hold of me, and I had to start surrendering and letting things go. But one of the things that I discovered was that my adrenals had burned out,
Mm.
which is an indicator. Like, I was just go, go, go. And I'll share, and I was going to share a little bit later, but my dad passed away in 2017, a week after I finished coaching school. And one of the last things he said to me, now he was one who worked, I don't know, 14 hours a day, like 7 days a week. And one of the last things he said to me was, "Don't work so hard, or you'll end up like me."
Wow.
And I like, and it came at a same point where I started. He was showing me things, giving me revelations about, this is not the way to go. This is not how it's supposed to be. But all the voices that were around me and the people that I was surrounded with were screaming, "Hustle, just go faster, strive, grind it out, like sleep when you die."
Yeah.
And I started going, "Wait a second, this is not what I'm called to." So it was quite a moment.
Yeah. I think too that we live in a culture, and this has been around for several years, so it's not a news flash to anybody.
Mhm,
What I refer to as a microwave society, where I mean, we're just so technically driven,
right.
where we have grown accustomed to having everything very quickly with a push of a button, a click of a mouse. We have drive through everything,
Mhm,
and it's just not God's way. Can
mm,
he do that? He
mm,
can, because he can do anything that he wants to. But
right.
oftentimes when his answer is not yet, it's not that he's saying no, but it's a not yet. I think that it's important to not kind of take matters into our own hands. To your point, I become the driver here because God, you're not moving fast enough in my life.
Mhm.
And so I'm gonna take charge, I'm gonna take control, and I'm gonna get this thing done. It's all over but the shouting. Well, you
Right.
know, I have learned the hard way that it's never a good thing for Susan to come up with a plan and hope that God follows it. And I think that I think that if I'm going to be completely honest, the different times where I have been just so trapped to numbers and platform and those types of things which are so common in our world, there was
Yeah.
something underneath that drivenness in me that I realized about myself. And I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth, but for me, it was I I thought I was partnered with a lie, believing that if I had those things, I would feel better about myself, that I would feel more secure. I would feel like I have quote unquote arrived, or I've reached the pinnacle. But when that didn't happen, it was in those moments where those types of disappointments came that God allowed those things into my life because he wanted me to become more secure in who I was in him,
Yeah.
so that if he wants to bring me to these different things and allow me to have these different things in my life, that
Mhm.
I'm not finding my identity in those. And
Right.
I think that so often the world tells us that you are going to feel better about yourself. You're going to get recognized. You're going to be acknowledged. You're going to feel seen, and you're going to feel valued if you have all these things. But in order to have those, you're also going to have to hustle.
Yeah.
You're also going to have to strive.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful that even though those seasons of my life were hard, I'm grateful that God loved me enough to allow me to go through that
Mhm.
so that I could break free
Yeah.
through him, not in and of myself, but allow him to help me break free from the partnership that I had had with hustle culture and the lie, and become
Mhm.
secure in him. So, because I think that anything this side of heaven is subject to change. And so, okay, so you're hustling and you're, working your entire life for that one thing,
Mhm.
sacrificing other areas, to your point, your health or
Yeah.
whatever, you don't have boundaries or whatever the
Mhm.
case might be. And so for what? For what? And so if I have partnered with, this is where I'm going to feel secure and better about myself, but then that changes the very thing that I hustled for, then that changes. Well, so then my identity changes because
Right.
that's where I've placed it in. Whereas if we break that agreement and turn and align ourselves to biblical truth
Mhm.
and discover this is who I am in you, the God who never changes. And if you don't ever change, then my identity never changes. But I think that this partnership with God, he has a role, we have a role. And so wouldn't you say then it takes a responsibility and an intentionality on our part. We talked about this briefly just a few minutes ago. Here's what I feel led to do.
Mhm.
God, here's what I feel like you're placing on my heart. Number one, is this you?
Yes.
Or is this just me?
Yeah.
Or is this somebody that has planted an idea in me? Is this
Mhm.
you? And
Mhm.
if it's you, what steps should I take toward this? I mean, we're gonna talk here in just a few minutes about you being an entrepreneur and this wonderful coaching ministry that you have. God placed that in you. And so I
Yeah.
want to hear a little bit about that and just your process of working that out with him. And so that really leads into then, I believe that God places dreams in each of us, and it's up to us to put footsteps to those dreams. Again, he places them in our heart, but all throughout the Bible, God says something, but then we have to
Yeah.
activate our faith to take actionable steps. I
Mhm.
believe it's important to remember that he paces us, he doesn't drive us, which is so hustle culture, drive, 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 drive. How
Yeah.
can we counter this narrative in culture and live from a place of resting in God's timing, provision, and will for our lives?
Well, if I can go back just a second, one of my mentors that I was, plugged in with back in 2017, 2018, when I was like, I called it like my unwinding from grinding season.
Wow.
That was what he gives me a lot of fun titles. But what she had said, I don't remember if it was on a call or in a book, but it was whatever you build in striving, you have to maintain in striving.
Woo.
Those words have stuck with me because I can't maintain a constant level of striving. That to me, like I love working out. That would be like going to a hit workout, like a high intensity interval training workout, and expecting your body to do that for however long you're working a day, 8 hours a day, let's just say.
Yeah.
You're expecting your body to operate at that level in all things you do, and it's just not acceptable.
Yeah.
I wanted to just share that phrase because there's certain phrases that just kind of lock in with me, and I felt like that was for somebody. So, like I said before, I love to flip the script. That's one of my favorite things to say. I just love to just be counterculture and actually kind of shock people sometimes. But it really is living, in the pace of grace, but also the pace of faith. I encountered a little turtle yesterday and rescued it off the path of getting run over by bicycles, like a little tiny baby turtle. And whenever I see turtles, I just think of like they have this very protective shell on them, and they move slower, but they have a lot of really cool way. I don't know, they're just amazing. So but I think of like they have a pace of grace, and you know he doesn't push or prod us. Like I don't see, that reminds me of Egypt, and I could share a whole story of like coming out of Egypt, and even having to I'm still getting some of Egypt out of me, the slave mentality of, work hard, do this, bah. But
Yeah.
there is this unwinding process, and there's times it comes back for me, and for those of you who are listening, there's no condemnation here. I just want to make that very clear. We're just calling you higher
Yeah.
to come up above the noise of what the world is causing you to maybe get anxious and feel like I gotta hurry up, I gotta get this done. Sorry, I get a little. But there could be seasons like where we are moving at more of an accelerated pace. It's just not at all times. So it is very counterproductive in the world's eyes to work from a place of rest, like counterproductive producing. But as I had shared before we got started on here, when I have calls with clients, I leave a half hour between available spots on my calendar, whether it's to read for a little bit, whether it's to go for a walk. I shared sometimes I actually lay down and pray and listen to worship music. Sometimes I dance. It just depends, like, what are we doing right now? So it may seem counterproductive, but it actually isn't. You're getting filled back up. And that's his heart for us. We're not called to burn out. We're called to be flames that stay lit. And if you haven't looked around, the world needs us now more than ever. So we can't burn out.
Yeah.
Can I just say that again?
Yeah.
Stay
Yeah.
lit.
Yep.
Stay lit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned there is no condemnation here, really, truly. And we prayed for you before
Mhm.
we started this conversation that you would hear really not our voices, but the heart of God for you. He loves you, He cares about you, and He wants to bring freedom from feeling like you're just hustling, and from the lie that God is some taskmaster just driving you. That is not the heart of the Father for you. He loves you. He's tender towards you. He cares about you, and he does not want you to be burnt out and running at such a pace that you're just spent. That's not God's heart for you. I
Right.
also just feel prompted to share also that
Mhm.
rest is not lazy or
Yeah.
selfish. I really feel strongly as Kristen was sharing, and so I'm just going to follow the prompting of the Holy Spirit here, that
Mhm.
rest is not lazy and it is not selfish. If we believe that lie, and it's out there, it's available for us to be baited with, but
Mhm.
if we believe that lie, then we also have to go to the Bible. And when we see Jesus's earthly ministry, and
Mhm.
he took time away to
Yeah.
rest and
Right.
and to allow God to pour back into him because he had just poured out. Well, then really then what we're saying is, oh, Jesus was lazy, or Jesus was being selfish. And wow,
Mhm.
is that
Mhm.
biblical? That is not biblical. We would never say that about him.
Right.
And so I really, to Kristen's point, there's
Mhm.
no condemnation here. I
Yeah.
really just believe, and I think that I speak for Kristen too. He wants to set your heart free from
Exactly.
this.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Get unlocked from that captive place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So as we're wrapping up here, I mentioned, and you even shared a little bit the
Mhm.
beginning of our time together. You are an entrepreneur, which is so exciting. Before you share real briefly how people can connect with you and
Mhm.
explore the possibility of you being their coach, what wisdom would you impart to listeners that you've learned along the way in this area?
Well, first of all, seek him for answers first for the next steps before people, especially for those of you as entrepreneurs. What one thing that he's just, it's an overarching message, overarching. Just for example, I asked him what's my business name. Did I get it right away? No, I waited. But it's so much more meaningful when we get that clear directive word name from him. And this is something that I've really been kind of grabbing onto, not only for myself, but for, the women that I'm coming alongside. Stay on course with your "but God said" rather than the "but what if." I say that there's a lot of well-meaning people out there, and it could be friends, family. As you get these directives from him, like I said, it may look crazy. It's going to look different, and you're probably going to get a lot of, "But what if XYZ? What's your plan B?"
Yeah,
But God said.
right,
So
right.
we really, once we get that firm, first of all, firm foundation of who he's called us to be, what he's calling us to do, what is the like deep why behind it, you're gonna soar, you're gonna rise, and you're gonna rise above the noise of what people are even, of course, there might be hurtful comments, and we're human. So, or I don't want you to think that I don't get affected, because I do at times, because I'm on a wild adventure right now myself. But I know his directive. I know the path that I'm on, and I just have to constantly go back to what did he say. So having kingdom like coaches, mentors, friends around you that remind you of your "but God said." I also want to remind you that as you are potentially stepping into something new, and it's a directive from him, not everybody needs to come into the birthing suite.
Come on. That's good. Somebody just got free right there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some people that might come to the graduation party. There's some that are there to be, like, I like to say, a spiritual midwife along the journey. But we can't always invite people in right away, because as you are grabbing onto this word from the Lord, and you're even like, I don't even know what I'm doing, and you get it, like too many people coming in going, I don't even know what you're doing. You could miscarry
Yeah.
this baby that he's giving you. So I wanted to make sure I shared that. And then I love to, just for myself personally, always bookend each day with the word, for sure. And I've shared with others, I am a bookended introvert. I bookend the day alone with God, and I bookend the other part of the day with God. In the middle of the day, yes, he's with me, of course, but when it comes to people, like I need to be by myself, then I have people, and then I am by myself again.
Yes, I
So
get that.
have your bookends, have the bookends, know what your bookends are, know what your middle part of the day is, and just be really diligent to, set great boundaries too. Looks
Yeah,
different for everybody.
so good. Oh, wow. Those are just really wise tips. And I think that if we can implement even just one of those, start somewhere, be willing to start somewhere, really, really good. And I feel like they're something that we can apply to our lives. They're not so far reaching that I could never attain that. So wise. All right. So in the last couple of minutes, tell women how they can connect with you and explore the possibility of you coming alongside them as their coach.
So I love to say I'm a spiritual midwife, a flight attendant. um, he's shown me that I, help women soar in their calling and to roar with their voices. Those are a couple areas that a lot of women just really need a trail guide. I come in with some prophetic, guidance and wisdom on calls. It's like a three-way call with Holy Spirit on our coaching calls. You can find me on Instagram, renew, RENEW .wings, of course, because I love wings, and Facebook, Kristin Kurtz. You can go to newwingscoaching.net if you want to schedule a 30-minute discovery call. You do get a little, I call it ninja coaching in that session to get some keys. But yeah, I would love to chat with. I only work with women
Yeah.
because it's hard for me is to come alongside women to.
Yep.
Partly I've been released. I've also been released from, the corporate sector. I retired early at the age of, how old was I? 44. And my heart is to really see women just come alive in what God's called them to do. And things happen quickly in sessions, which is really fun. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
And don't forget to share, you have a podcast.
I do. Sometimes I forget about it.
Well, I didn't.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's called Hope Unlocked. And my heart is really to interview women like what you're doing and have them share their testimonies, whether it's like walking through the fire and coming out with keys to impart hope, because how many people need hope in this day? This current season is called Launching Pioneers. So I'm sharing a lot of, especially the women I love coming alongside that are doing crazy things in business, ministry, and sharing their process, whether it's been a 14-year process of birthing something, hanging on to the promise, or somebody getting a word and like all of a sudden it just explodes immediately. So there's all these different stories of women who come on and share their beautiful testimonies, because we need testimonies
Mm.
always.
Yeah, and I am a firm believer there is power in a story. So
Yes.
good. And women can find that podcast on any
Anywhere.
podcast platform.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristin, for all of your wisdom and joining us, speaking into this
Yeah.
conversation. It was great having you here. Ladies, it was great also having you with us this week. Be sure to, again, check out the show notes for all of the links in how you can connect with Kristin in the online space and reach out to her if you'd like to explore the possibility of her coming alongside you as your coach. But I pray that you have a great rest of your week, and I'll catch you right back here next time. Thank you so much for joining me this week. It was great connecting with you. Hey, would you do me a quick favor that would mean the world to me? Would you go ahead and leave a few stars and a review or even a comment, it not only means so much to me, but in the online space and the podcasting world, the more stars, reviews, and comments that a podcast receives, the further the reach. It ranks up a little bit higher in Google searches, which then results in reaching more women with this amazing content. So if you are blessed and enjoying, just the content that you are hearing here on the podcast, would you go ahead and leave a few stars, a review, and some comments? It means the world to me. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you right back here, same place, same time next week.